Chapter 1. A Portrait of Charles T. Munger, by Michael Broggie. Behind the extraordinary story of Berkshire Hathaway are two financial geniuses, the widely acclaimed Warren Buffett and his silent partner, Charlie Munger, who relishes his obscurity. Charlie is Warren's friend, lawyer, advisor, devil's advocate. Warren once called him the abominable no-man, and one of the largest stockholders in one of the most successful publicly traded companies in American business history. Since 1964, when Warren, and some years later Charlie, assumed management of Berkshire, its market value has increased an astonishing 13,500 times, from $10 million to roughly $135 billion, without much of an increase in outstanding shares. Such phenomenal growth is the singular achievement of these two unassuming Midwesterners, who combined their synergistic abilities to recognize and seize opportunities other businessmen consistently overlook. While Warren is one of the most admired and publicized business leaders in the country, Charlie has purposefully sidestepped the limelight, choosing relative anonymity instead. To better understand this complex and highly private businessman, we must start at the beginning. Charles Thomas Munger was born on January 1, 1924, in America's heartland, Omaha, Nebraska. Many notables share his Midwestern roots: Will Rogers, Henry Fonda, John Pershing, Harry Truman, Walt Disney, Ann Landers, Gerald Ford, and, of course, Warren Buffett. Charlie initially crossed paths with the Buffett family during the formative years of his life when he worked at Buffett & Son, an upscale grocery store in Omaha, about 6 blocks from the Munger household. The boss and part owner was Warren's grandfather, Ernest. A strict disciplinarian, he scheduled his young workers for 12-hour shifts with no meals or breaks. According to Charlie, his boss's staunch anti-socialist attitude was manifested in his rule requiring the boys to present 2 pennies at the end of their shifts to cover their share of the cost of the new Social Security Act. In return, they received a $2 daily wage, along with a considerable lecture about the evils of socialism. The arduous working conditions in the Buffett grocery store had a lasting influence on both Charlie and Warren. Warren, 6 years younger, served his hard times under Grandpa Ernest several years after his future business partner had moved on. Charlie's formal education began at Dundee Elementary School, where he and his younger sisters, Mary and Carol, were indoctrinated with ethical homilies. Charlie's teachers remember a smart kid who was also inclined to be a bit of a wiseacre. He enjoyed challenging the conventional wisdom of teachers and fellow students with his ever-increasing knowledge gained through voracious reading, particularly biographies. Today, he can't remember the first time he was exposed to the aphorisms of Ben Franklin, but they fueled an ineffaceable admiration for the eclectic and eccentric statesman and inventor. Charlie's parents, Al and Florence Munger, encouraged reading and gave each of their children several books at Christmas, usually devoured by that night. At the nearby home of the Mungers' close friends, the Davises, Charlie often read the medical journals belonging to Dr. Ed Davis, who was both his father's best friend and a family physician. Charlie's early exposure to Dr. Davis's medical library spawned a lifelong interest in science. By the time he was 14, the precocious learner had also become one of the doctor's best friends. Charlie became so interested in medicine that he watched motion pictures of Dr. Davis, a urologist, performing surgery, and became fascinated with the statistical outcomes of similar procedures in the field. At home, Charlie developed a fondness for raising hamsters and periodically traded them with other children. Even at an early age, Charlie showed a sagacious negotiating ability and usually gained a bigger specimen or one with unusual coloring. When his brood grew to 35 animals, his mother ordered an end to his hobby because of the pungent odor from his basement hamster farm. One of his sisters remembered years later that the family had to endure the incessant squeaking of hungry hamsters until Charlie arrived home from school to feed them. Charlie attended Central High School, a very large public school that was recognized as a good college preparatory school. The teachers, mostly women, were dedicated to their work and to their students. The Central High curriculum provided a conventional classic education, in which Charlie naturally excelled because of his logically driven, inquiring mind. Throughout elementary and secondary school, Charlie was younger and smaller than his classmates, having been moved ahead in elementary school after his mother taught him to read phonically. Too small to compete in regular high school sports, he joined the rifle team, earned a varsity letter, and eventually became team captain. His letterman's sweater, a large letter on a very small chest is Charlie's memory, attracted attention from co-eds who wondered how such a scrawny kid could earn a varsity letter. Fortunately for Charlie, his father was an avid outdoorsman and duck hunter and took joy in his son's marksmanship. Omaha in the 1920s was the proverbial melting pot. Different races and religions mixed socially and commercially, and crime was practically unknown. Doors and vehicles were left unlocked, and a person's word was trusted implicitly. Kids played kick the can on warm summer evenings and went to Saturday matinees to see the latest talkies, such as King Kong, a favorite of 8-year-old Charlie. The 1930s brought hard times, and Omaha experienced the severity of the Great Depression. Charlie's observations of the plight of those less fortunate made a lasting impression. He saw hobos roaming the streets looking for handouts and others who were willing to sweep a driveway or porch in exchange for a sandwich. Thanks to family connections, Charlie landed a boring job counting passers-by. It paid 40 cents an hour. Charlie preferred this work to carrying heavy boxes of groceries. Charlie's grandfather was a respected federal judge, and his father followed in his footsteps to become a prosperous lawyer. Charlie's immediate family was not dramatically affected by the Depression, but some members of Charlie's extended family were. This era provided real learning experiences for young Charlie. He witnessed the generosity and business acumen of his grandfather as he helped rescue a small bank in Stromsburg, Nebraska, that was owned by Charlie's uncle Tom. Because of the miserable economy and drought-damaged crops, the bank's farm-based clients were defaulting on loans. Tom had rolled up $35,000 in uncollectible notes when he called upon Grandpa Munger for support. The judge risked nearly half of his assets by exchanging $35,000 in sound first mortgages for the bank's weak loans, thus enabling Tom to open his doors after Roosevelt's bank holiday. The judge eventually recovered most of his investment, but not until a great many years later. Judge Munger also sent his daughter's husband, a musician, to pharmacy school and helped him buy a well-located pharmacy that had closed because of the Depression. The business prospered and secured the future for Charlie's aunt. Charlie learned that by supporting each other, the Mungers weathered the worst economic collapse in the nation's history. Fortunately, Al Munger's law practice prospered during the Depression and was given a boost when the United States Supreme Court agreed to review a tax case involving a small soap-making company he represented. Coincidentally, the huge Colgate-Palmolive company was also affected by the court's decision. Concerned that the Midwestern attorney didn't have the requisite experience to argue successfully before the highest court, Colgate offered to pay Al liberally to step aside and allow a famous New York attorney to take his place. The big city lawyer lost the case, while Al pocketed a substantial fee. Later, Al joked that he could have lost the case just as well for a much smaller fee. The amount of the fee has never been revealed, but it was enough, when combined with income Al earned from his other clients, to help keep the Mungers comfortable during the Depression. Charlie also helped the family by working to earn his own spending money and thus learned firsthand the value of financial independence. In 1941, as the war raged across the Atlantic, Charlie graduated from Central High School and left Omaha for the University of Michigan. There he chose mathematics as his major, drawn by the appeal of numerical logic and reason. He also discovered physics after enrolling in a basic course to fulfill an academic requirement for science. Charlie was fascinated by the power of physics and its boundless reach. In particular, he was impressed by the process followed by physicists such as Albert Einstein to address the unknown. Physics-like problem-solving was to become a passion for Charlie, and is a skill he considers helpful in framing the problems of life. He has often stated that anyone who wants to be successful should study physics because its concepts and formulas so beautifully demonstrate the powers of sound theory. College-aged men were then in high demand for military service. Days after turning 19 and completing his second year at Michigan, Charlie enlisted in the Army Air Corps in a program that would eventually make him a second lieutenant. He was sent to the Albuquerque campus of the University of New Mexico for studies in general science and engineering. Next, he was shuffled to the prestigious California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, California. He was schooled in thermodynamics and the science of meteorology, then essential to flyers, and trained to become a meteorologist. After completing his studies at Caltech, Charlie was dispatched to a permanent duty station in Nome, Alaska. While still in the service, he married Nancy Huggins, a young woman from Pasadena who was a good friend of his sister Mary at Scripps College. They were stationed in Albuquerque and then San Antonio until Charlie was discharged from the Army Air Corps in 1946. Soon, Charlie and Nancy had their first child, a boy whom they named Teddy. Although he had attended several universities, Charlie still did not have a bachelor's degree. Nevertheless, using the GI Bill, he applied to Harvard Law School, where his father had preceded him. His lack of an undergraduate degree threatened to derail him, but a family friend, former Harvard Law School Dean Roscoe Pound, interceded on Charlie's behalf. Charlie was admitted, despite the determination of the admissions office to first send him back to college. As it turned out, Charlie had little trouble succeeding at Harvard, though he annoyed a few people along the way. Because of his intellect, the Army measured his IQ at the top of the curve. Charlie had a tendency to be abrupt, which was often interpreted as rudeness. Actually, Charlie was just in a hurry, and the customary pleasantries of the classroom were of little concern to him. Even so, he was liked by most of his peers and fully enjoyed the social aspects of student life in Cambridge. Charlie graduated from Harvard Law School in 1948 and was one of 12 in his class of 335 to graduate magna cum laude. He considered joining his father's law practice, but after a discussion with his father, both of them concluded that Charlie should try a larger city. He headed off to Southern California, a place he had liked while a student at Caltech. After passing the California bar exam, he joined the firm of Wright & Garrett, later renamed Music, Peeler & Garrett. Charlie built a house designed by his architect uncle, Frederick Stott, in South Pasadena, where he and Nancy and their 3 children, Teddy, Molly, and Wendy, lived. Despite outward appearances, all was not sunny in Charlie's world. His marriage was in trouble, and he and his wife finally divorced in 1953. Not long thereafter, Charlie learned that his adored son Teddy was terminally ill with leukemia. It was a significant burden for 29-year-old Charlie. In that era, before bone marrow transplants, there was no hope. A friend remembers that Charlie would visit his dying son in the hospital and then walk the streets of Pasadena crying. During this sad time, his friend and law partner, Roy Tolles, arranged through a friend for Charlie to meet Nancy Berry Borthwick, who lived in Los Angeles. She was a Stanford graduate and had 2 small boys, close to the ages of his girls. Charlie and Nancy had much in common and had fun together, and after a few months of dating became engaged. They were married in a small family wedding in January 1956, and all 4 children, his girls and her boys, aged 4 to 7, attended the wedding. Charlie and Nancy lived in her house in the hills of West Los Angeles for several years. Then, partly to shorten Charlie's daily commute, they moved to Hancock Park, where they still reside. The house they built there was large enough for their ever-expanding family, 3 more boys and a girl for a total of 8. Fortunately, both liked children. They also liked golf, the beach, and social clubs. Charlie and Nancy were soon members of the University Club, the California Club, the Los Angeles Country Club, and the Beach Club. With many new responsibilities, Charlie worked hard at his law practice. Even so, his earnings were unsatisfactory to him, as they were based on a combination of billable hours and seniority. He wanted more than what a senior law partner would be able to earn. He sought to be like his firm's leading capitalist clients, in particular the universally admired Harvey Mudd, later the founder of the college bearing his name. With Nancy's support, he turned to outside ventures and alternative ways to generate income. However, he never forgot the sound principles taught by his grandfather, to concentrate on the task immediately in front of him and to control spending. Following this conservative approach, Charlie seized opportunities to build wealth. He began investing in stocks and acquired equity in one of his clients' electronics businesses, a practice common among lawyers in the mid-1950s and 1960s. This investment was mutually beneficial. Charlie gained invaluable knowledge about business, while his client enjoyed the proactive attention of a lawyer who knew more than just the law. In 1961, Charlie tackled property development for the first time in partnership with Otis Booth, a client and friend. The venture, building condominiums on land near Caltech, was a smashing success, and the partners earned a handsome profit of $300,000 on a $100,000 investment. Charlie and Otis then undertook other successful construction and development projects in Pasadena. Later, Charlie participated in similar projects in Alhambra, California. He sharpened his business acumen by handling the negotiations and contracts. In all cases, he left all of his profits in real estate ventures so that bigger and bigger projects became possible. When he stopped in 1964, he had a nest egg of $1.4 million from real estate projects alone. In February 1962, he joined 4 colleagues from Music, Peeler & Garrett in establishing a new law firm. The original partners were Roy Tolles, Rod Hills, Dick Esbenshade, Fred Warder, and Charlie. They were joined by Rod's wife Carla and James T. Wood, a sole practitioner and friend of the Hills. They named the firm Munger, Tolles & Hills. Over the years, the firm had several names, always beginning with Munger Tolles. With the addition of Ron Olson, it finally became Munger, Tolles & Olson, shortened as Munger Tolles or MTO. The successful practice of law was by then a backstop rather than an ending objective for Charlie. At about the time that he was launching his new law firm, he was carefully crafting his exit plan. Charlie set up an investment partnership with Jack Wheeler, and they were later joined by Al Marshall. The idea for this partnership arose a few years earlier when the death of Charlie's father required him to return to Omaha to administer the estate. To welcome him home, the children of Charlie's friend and medical mentor, Dr. Ed Davis, arranged for a dinner party. Both of the Davis boys, Eddie Jr. and Neil, were former childhood chums of Charlie and were now physicians, while their sister Willa had married an Omaha businessman, Lee Seaman. The dinner party included Willa and Lee, Neil and his wife Joan, and a fellow named Warren Buffett. Charlie recognized Warren's family name from his days at Buffett & Son, and Warren had heard of Charlie a few years earlier when he was raising investment capital in Omaha. At one point, Warren had met with Dr. Davis and his wife Dorothy to explain his investment philosophy, and they agreed to place a large part of their life savings, $100,000, with him. Why? The doctor explained that Warren reminded him of Charlie Munger. Warren didn't know Charlie, but already had at least one good reason to like him. During the homecoming dinner, Charlie and Warren realized they shared many ideas. It also became evident to the others at the table that this was going to be a two-way conversation. As the evening progressed, the two young men, Warren was 29 and Charlie 35, became engrossed in a wide-ranging dialogue covering many aspects of business, finance, and history. Where one was knowledgeable, the other was just as excited to learn. Warren was unenthusiastic about Charlie's continued practice of law. He said that while law might be a good hobby for Charlie, it was a far less promising business than what Warren was doing. Warren's logic helped Charlie to decide to quit law practice at the earliest point he could afford to do so. When Charlie returned to Los Angeles, the conversations continued via telephone and lengthy letters, sometimes as long as 9 pages. It was evident to both that they were meant to be in business together. There was no formal partnership or contractual relationship. The bond was created by a handshake and backed by two Midwesterners who understood and respected the value of one's word. There were many benefits to their partnership: friendship, investment opportunities, and the unique ability to grasp each other's ideas and observations. Later, the two organizations they headed were also beneficiaries. As Warren was investing in and acquiring companies, he sent business to Munger Tolles, a practice that allowed him over time to benefit from having one of the nation's top law firms at his disposal. Munger Tolles, meanwhile, not only got Buffett's legal fees, but also gained because his reputation attracted other blue-chip clients to the firm. Munger Tolles is not just about money, though. Mirroring the way Charlie conducts his personal life, the firm has an enviable record of quietly providing pro bono assistance to support groups for impoverished and disadvantaged people in the Los Angeles community. To this day, Charlie continues to influence the firm's attorneys, reminding them, "You don't need to take the last dollar, and choose clients as you would friends." Though Charlie left the firm as an active partner in 1965 after only 3 years, his indelible influence remains, as indicated by the fact that his name still heads the listing of 175 attorneys. When he left, he didn't take his share of the firm's capital. Instead, he directed that his share go to the estate of his young partner, Fred Warder, who left behind a wife and children when he died of cancer. Charlie's plan for financial independence was soon working with great success. He spent much time building the asset base of Wheeler Munger & Company, his investment partnership with Jack Wheeler. He also spent time working in various real estate developments. All was going as planned, with no significant reverses. At Wheeler Munger & Company, Charlie was investing in stocks, partly with his own money and partly with other people's money. Charlie concentrated more on putting his capital to work than attracting new clients. Because Jack Wheeler held 2 seats on the Pacific Coast Stock Exchange, the partnership paid low trading commissions, while Wheeler Munger kept the overhead cost at close to zero. As time passed, Charlie and Warren kept up their frequent telephone conversations and letters, sharing ideas and investment concepts. Sometimes they would agree to invest in the same company, other times they went in different directions. In time, their independent portfolios had overlapping investments. Warren invested in the blue-chip stamp company and became the largest single shareholder. Charlie became the second largest shareholder, and eventually Berkshire Hathaway ended up acquiring the company. Charlie built the Wheeler-Munger partnership from 1962 through 1975. It did exceptionally well for the first 11 years, compounding at 28.3% gross, 20% net, versus 6.7% for the Dow, without a single down year. But the partnership was hit hard in the vicious bear market of 1973 and 1974, when it fell 31.9% and 31.5% in back-to-back years, as the partnership's largest holdings, Blue Chip Stamps and New America Fund, fell sharply. This decline was despite, as Charlie puts it, having its major investments virtually sure of eventually being saleable at prices higher than the quoted market prices. But the partnership rebounded strongly in 1975, rising 73.2%, bringing the overall record over 14 years to 19.8%, 13.7% net compounded annual returns versus 5% for the Dow. After this difficult experience, Charlie followed Warren in concluding that he no longer wanted to manage funds directly for investors. Warren had closed his own partnerships in 1969. Instead, they resolved to build equity through stock ownership in a holding company. When Wheeler Munger was liquidated, its stakeholders received shares in Blue Chip Stamps and Diversified Retailing. Later, these shares were converted into Berkshire Hathaway stock, which ended 1975 at $38. Today, each share is worth more than $85,000, making Charlie a member of the Forbes list of the 400 wealthiest individuals. While he doesn't mind the wealth, he regrets having his name on any such list. Despite his healthy self-image, Charlie would prefer to be anonymous. The story of Berkshire Hathaway's extraordinary success under Warren and Charlie's leadership has been told many times elsewhere, so the details won't be repeated here. To summarize, however, they have a spectacular track record of identifying undervalued companies and then either buying large stakes in the public markets or acquiring them outright. Regarding the latter, they have acquired a diverse assortment of businesses such as John's Manville, the Buffalo Evening News, Flight Safety International, NetJets, Shaw Carpet, Benjamin Moore, Geico, and Dairy Queen. In addition, they have purchased meaningful stakes in public companies such as the Washington Post, Coca-Cola, Gillette, and American Express. For the most part, they have held their major investments for the long term. In fact, they still own almost every business they've ever acquired outright. Charlie's affinity for Benjamin Franklin's expansive career in government, business, finance, and industry can be found in his many speeches and whenever he holds an audience, large or small. At the 75th anniversary of See's Candies, Charlie said, "I am a biography nut myself, and I think when you are trying to teach the great concepts that work, it helps to tie them into the lives and personalities of the people who develop them. I think you learn economics better if you make Adam Smith your friend. That sounds funny, making friends among the eminent dead, but if you go through life making friends with the eminent dead who had the right ideas, I think it will work better for you in life and work better in education. It's way better than just giving the basic concepts." Franklin used his self-made wealth to achieve financial independence so he could concentrate on societal improvement. Charlie admires that trait in his mentor and strives to emulate Franklin. He has had a long involvement with Good Samaritan Hospital and Harvard Westlake School, both in Los Angeles, and has chaired the boards of each. He and Nancy have also long supported Stanford University and the Huntington Library, art collections, and botanical gardens in San Marino, California. They provided funding for a major expansion to the Huntington called the Munger Research Center. Although Charlie is a self-described conservative Republican, chief among his causes is Planned Parenthood. He believes that every child deserves to be born to a welcoming mother. He also supports efforts to improve the environment and the quality of education. As the father of 8 and grandfather of 16, Charlie regards his legacy as helping future generations inherit a better world.